Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Yvonne Priest Show. I'm your host, Yvonne Priest, your little ray of darkness. And today we are going to do a deep dive into the Scream franchise. And today I have writer, director, and producer Jake Reedy with me. Jake, nice to finally get to meet you in somewhat
Hello.
person. The
I brought a friend with
closest
me.
I could get was that one.
I brought a friend with me. He's looking a little worse for wear because he was used last Halloween. So
That's as good as I could find. I swear I got like three of these around, and I don't know why that's the only one I have.
well, we have got a big ghost face scarecrow, but I couldn't work out how to set him up, like because he's an impale into the ground scarecrow. So
Well, you could have put the outfit on Batman behind you, but then you would have deprived
I,
us of Batman.
I should have like chucked the mask on him, but yeah,
You would have deprived
that
us of Batman. So yeah, can't do that.
yeah, exactly. And
Alrighty. So what's the first experience you remember of the Scream franchise?
okay, I absolutely love. I feel like Scream is sort of like because when I was a kid, Elm Street was big, Friday the 13th was big, and stuff like that. But I was a bit too young to go and see them. Um, Even though I really wanted to, and I did harass my parents into letting me go and see a Nightmare on Elm Street 4, but then I chickened out at the last minute, so I didn't end up going to see it. So I kind of feel like Scream was my franchise. Because like in the 90s, like I think what 96 when the original Scream came out, I just graduated high school. So and I was a bit iffy on watching it because it and The Frighteners came out around the same time and they had sort of similar posters. And I was a bit like, oh, I don't know about this. Like Frighteners looks really cool. And my friend Scott dragged me to see Scream. He was just like, dude, you've got to see this. It's awesome. And I remember going to see Scream with a group of friends, probably the first week it was out because he'd already seen it. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It was such a good time. Like it is just it's a movie I just keep going back to like constantly. It's just one of those great fun horror movies that just leaves you feeling up and in a good mood by the end of it. So yeah, that was my first Scream experience. And the very next I was completely fascinated with Scream when it first came out. I was obsessed with it. I just thought like this is so cool. This feels like the start of like this really cool fresh horror franchise and I'm in on the ground floor for it. And yeah, I went out the next day and brought the soundtrack and that was the whole thing. How about you? When was what was your first Scream experience?
My first Scream experience was the VHS release in would have been 97 for that because it took ages for VHS to
Yeah,
come out.
yeah, it,
My dad had a mate, he was running a video shop and he was getting master copies of stuff. So I remember
oh,
watching this with like the little, you know,
yeah,
counter at the top. And for days or for weeks, I would do like inter school sports saying, I'm going to go see Scream. We're getting it for the house. And everyone's like, you can't watch it. That's an MA movie. And I was like, I'm going to watch it. I was 10 at the time. And the experiences I had was like slashes had been like the sequels to Halloween and stuff like that. So yeah, they try to up the body count and stuff like that, but they were still quite tame. And I was at that kind of point where I was like, liking the idea of like the chase of finding the next thing to actually see if it could scare me.
yeah.
It did the job. That opening scene with Drew Barrymore, it actually freaked me out so much.
It was amazeballs. Like what my partner's like when they saw that big scene, they like called their mom and were just like, "I love you." It's just like completely freaked them out. So yeah, that opening scene really made a big impact on everyone, and I remember it being such a good time watching it in the cinema, like especially the original because there was so many red herrings and the mystery was so good, and you're sitting there and you're going, "I bet it's him." And then something would happen. You'd be like, no, 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 it can't be him, can't be him, can't be him. It's him. And just like guessing through the whole movie and just trying to work out like who's the killer, who's the killer. And I mean, Jesus, that ending was like, what? It was just
Yes. So for those of you playing at home, we are going to have spoilers about Ghostface and whatnot. And honestly, if you are here, I'd I'd love for you to watch, but please probably don't. But also, if you haven't watched the Scream franchise, are you even a horror fan?
what are you doing with your life? Like, if you haven't
Exactly.
watched Scream, like, what are you doing with your life? Like, go sort your life out, watch the movies because there are going to be spoilers aplenty for a 20-something-year-old franchise, nearly 30-year-old franchise. So you should probably go do that and then come back. We'll still be here.
We'll still be here because we'll still be going on about, I didn't like this person. Oh my God, this was stupid and stuff like that.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. I don't know, maybe because I was so used to growing up watching Wes Craven do like Freddy Krueger and stuff like that, and like People Under the Stairs, where it seemed to be kind of campy. This took away the camp.
Yeah.
This made it so real. And it was, the whole idea of kind of, all monsters are human. It got too real because I was about to approach high school myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, great story. I love it.
Yeah, it was really cool because like up until I feel like Scream, because I mean, Wes, God bless him, just completely every time he touched horror and did something fresh, he completely reinvented the genre and just set it on a whole new path and started a whole new trend. Because obviously like Last House on the Left, People Under the Stairs, then Nightmare on Elm Street, like really kicked the what am I even saying? The slasher franchise into high gear. And then, New Nightmare was like sort of like the prelude to like that whole self-referential meta horror. And then, Scream came along. And I think the really cool thing about Scream is it was not just a slasher movie, but it brought the mystery back into it as well. Because I mean, obviously, like growing up watching Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, you know who the killer is. Like, you're not sitting there in Halloween going, oh, I wonder who this Michael Myers character is. Like, you're not doing that with Elm Street. It's like, hey, Freddy's the killer. We've worked, it's established, let's go have fun.
Yeah.
Which is great for 80s horror. But like, with Scream, I feel like it really sort of set that trajectory for 90s horror, which, they tried to emulate, obviously, with like, I Know What You Did Last Summer. There was that element of mystery in that as to who the fisherman was. That's still such a stupid name for a slasher. I've got to say, The Fisherman. Like, I love that movie, but The Fisherman, I mean, come on. Valentine did it as well. Yeah, so much stuff just trying to sort of like recapture that original greatness that the first Scream movie had.
And to think this was like the first one that actually gave us two killers.
Yeah.
As well, something that no one saw coming at all.
No, not at all.
It's just...
Yeah, not at all. Like, when you got to the end of Scream and it was revealed that Ghostface was two people, like, I was just like, what the hell? Like, wow. Like, it was amazing. It was so amazing. And those two original Ghostfaces, like, as much as I like trying to save our rankings for the end of the show, like Billy and Stu were just gold, and I don't think anyone's ever touched them. Like, because you like those guys, like they were psychos, they were completely mental and a bit too in love with each other. But you really loved hanging out with Billy and Stu, and that was the genius of Scream, is that you loved all these characters. So when the killer was revealed, I was kind of like, I sort of maybe want him to get away with it just a little bit, just a little bit. Like, but yeah, like that was such great characters, and like Lillard and Skeet Ulrich were just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And there was one thing I was saying to a friend ages ago about how come, people aren't afraid of like Michael Myers and stuff like that, like they were with like someone like Mick Taylor. I'm like, well, you don't get to see the joy on like Freddy's face. Well, you do, but it's distorted, and you don't get to see the joy on Jason and Michael's face because it's covered, but you got to see the joy on their face, especially that moment when Stu's like, watched some movies, took some notes, it was fun. You're like, oh, no, too much.
Oh, totally. And I mean, the thing is too, it's like with Mick Taylor, like with Billy and Stu, it's like you could know these people, which was the scary part. It's like with Mick Taylor, it's like, I've met people like that, and they are fucking terrifying in real life. Like, they really are. You're just like, oh man, I don't want to lift to the 7-Eleven with you. It's cool. I'll walk. I'm good with that. But same with Billy and Stu. It's like, these people were like your friends. Like they were like people that you could be friends with. They were like movie geeks and stuff like that. Like you were. And it's sort of like, oh wow. Like, and suddenly you're kind of side-eyeing your buddies, just going like, you're a little bit too much in love with like The Exorcist Part 3. I'm a little concerned. I'm a
Yeah,
little
but that was
worried.
me. I was that person.
Who doesn't love The Exorcist Part 3? I mean, come on.
Yeah, because yes, I remember someone ages ago saying there was a meme being like when you're like at school and you've seen a horror movie and you're telling everyone, and someone's like, yeah, that was you. As soon as you saw a horror movie, yet straight away you're like, guess what I saw? I saw this kind of thing. But yeah, the friend group was so believable because I'm pretty sure that my friend group was pretty much identical to something like that in high
Yeah,
school. So I can see why you're like, well, you've got to suspect them. They're your friends kind of thing.
no, no,
Suspect
not.
everyone.
And that was the cool thing about that group of friends in Scream as well, is that they like, and this is sort of one of the issues that I had like going forward with some of the Scream sequels, is that group of friends in the original Scream like really felt like they were friends.
Yeah.
They really, the friendship felt organic. You could like sort of go, oh yeah, I can kind of see why these people are hanging out. Like, whereas you get to Scream 4 and it's just sort of like, I don't know why any of you people are talking to each other. Like, but yeah, I mean the original was just like it still remains such a great fun film and such a milestone of horror.
Even if you don't watch the sequels, it is a staple that as a horror fan you have to have seen.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you can avoid the rest if you want to continue the story. It's beneficial too because it's amazing just how Ghostface becomes essentially like an idea or an entity instead of just being just the one
Mm.
wave of things, which is great. But yeah, I feel like this is kind of like for horror fans, you should kind of know it before you're born, kind of thing. You know what I mean? One of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things that just embedded straight away.
It has. It's become like Ghostface, and I mean, particularly the original, has just become like one of those horror staples. Like you've got to have seen it, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, original Friday the 13th, original Halloween, The Exorcist. Like it's just Child's Play. It's one of those, Hellraiser. Like it's one of those movies that's just like, this is just essential viewing if you're a horror fan. Like absolutely essential. Like you just have to watch it.
Exactly. And then when you go on to Scream 2, they continue on with the whole let's have a nice little clean friend group. You pretty much had the same people. So once again, you're like, who do I suspect out of these people?
Well,
Like
yeah,
you have Mickey, but then again, did you really suspect Mickey? I didn't suspect Mickey.
I didn't want to suspect Mickey because I was just like, I'm a little too much like you in personality. It's like, when Randy's like, Mickey, the creepy Tarantino film student. I'm just like going, whoa,
Yeah.
dude, hey, just chill. Let's not be pointing the finger at Tarantino fans, okay? Like I'm feeling a little personally hurt. Come on. But look, I do really like Scream 2. It was a movie I could not wait for. I could not wait for it when it was coming out. And thankfully, like, we only had to wait like what, a year before it came
Got
out.
that.
Um and I remember going to see it like opening day, first session. I was just like, I don't care what I'm doing. I'm skipping class that day. I'm going to see Scream 2. Like, no one is ruining it for me. I was really, really sad to see Randy go. I think we all were. Like,
Yeah.
a little part of us all died when
Oh yeah.
Randy died. It was just like a bit. Um, but I mean, I did really like Scream 2. It didn't sort of. It was weird because it sort of didn't recapture the magic for me, but it sort of went off on a kind of like a bit of a new way.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. I don't know. What were your feelings on it?
It is a bit lighter, even though they usually say that when it comes to like the second one, the body count's bigger. I feel like there was a bit of tameness to it that it
Yeah,
just didn't have, like the other one didn't have. And sometimes that can just come if you have bigger budgets, so maybe things don't seem as kind of cheap and stuff like that, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes a bigger budget can ruin things sometimes in horror. But I don't know. I found all the characters to be likable. I did not see those two Ghostface coming because I don't think anyone was looking at Debbie Salt, or not Debbie. Is it Debbie Salt? Yeah,
yeah, yep.
yeah, or Nancy Loomis. I don't think anyone saw her rocking up in anything because she wasn't really a key figure in anything. But then
No,
you realize she wasn't around when like there was going to be cameras or anything like that. or if she wasn't like in view of them, so she knew what she was hiding.
Yeah.
And
It was really
she took out Randy as well.
like, which I have issues with because I'm just like, you look at Debbie Salt, it's just like, no way you are taking out a 20 something dude. Like, if it was Mickey, I kind of would have believed it, especially in such a savage way. I'm like, Randy, come on, man. I know you're a video store geek, but you could have fought back a bit better than that.
She did throw him around quite a lot though. She like smashed a window.
He was like throwing him around like she's at SummerSlam and he's like, she's Hulk Hogan or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a bit crazy. But I think the thing with Scream 2 is that like I did really admire that, you really couldn't pick the killers in it. For a while there, like it really looked like they were maybe going to go the obvious route with Derek and have it be the boyfriend again because it was
Yeah.
just like, oh, like he is a bit too nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was cool, and I really love the fact. One of the things I do really love about Scream 2 is Cotton Weary coming back,
Yes.
and Liev Schreiber reprising the role, which I thought was great. It's like this is so cool because it's like it's the same guy from the first one. Like he's literally less than a cameo in the first Scream, and to have him come back in such a major role, I thought was really really great.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, he was such a great red herring as well because you just sort of like going, oh man, is it Cotton? Like the motivation's obvious. Like
He wants
you
his
know,
15 minutes after, she lied about it and everything like that.
yeah. It was really cool. I really dug it.
There was one bit when they're in the hospital and Mickey says something about like, oh, if Ghostface is in the house, why would you go in there to make it kind of like dawn on Sydney that maybe
Yeah.
Derek that did. And I was like, nah, I don't like that. Something's up. No, it's not. It's definitely not him. If you're kind of pointing out that it's probably him, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, and that was such a cool thing about the Scream movies is that they really do stand up to repeated viewings and you pick up little bits each time. Like even now, like, what, nearly 30 years later. Um,
God, that's
you know,
depressing.
I know it's depressing.
It's so depressing.
Oh, this happened. Um, But like I'll watch Scream and I'll just be like, oh holy shit, I didn't even notice that before. Like, and there's still moments in there where I'm still trying to figure out, like, to this day, I'm just like, who killed Henry Winkler in Scream? Who was it? Which was it? Was it Billy or Stu? I'm still trying to work it out.
I'm still confused with that one myself.
Yeah, right. It's like, I think that's the genius of these movies is that you can just keep rewatching them and picking up new little things along the way. I mean, another great thing about Scream 2 is that opening kill is just as good as the original. Like that opening kill in the theater with Jada Pinkett Smith. Wow, like that was so cool. Like that was just such a great like kickoff to that movie.
I remember watching it when I was younger, and I was kind of like, why is everyone being so loud at the movies? It doesn't happen here. Like, I don't know if I can believe this. But then to go to the Astor like here in Melbourne, when people are
Mm.
watching like the Blues Brothers or Rocky Horror, I'm like, yeah, actually, no, I could buy that
Yeah,
because people don't sit down and keep quiet.
same. I'm just like, man, like I remember watching it and just going, God, this screening would be so shit to be at. Like, I'd just be like, everyone, please shut up. I want to watch the movie. Like, can you just chill? But then I remember going to see a screening of The Crow down here in Brisbane, and it was sort of like the first kind of interactive screening that I'd ever been to, and people are just like quoting the movie around me. I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess this does happen, like when people really love something. So cool.
I was like that. I was watching Lord of the Rings, and when you have that moment, one does not walk into Mordor. There was like three waves of laughter. So there was people knowing the laughs, knowing the lines coming up,
Yeah.
hearing the line, then going, "Oh, that's where it's from." Like afterwards.
Well, it was so weird for me too because I sort of was like, oh, would that really happen at a movie that people haven't seen? But again, I was the same Lord of the Rings. When I saw Return of the King, like that scene where Legolas takes down the elephant at the end, like people were jumping up and cheering and like pumping their fists in the air. Like this was like opening day of Return of the King. And I'm just like, okay, I guess people do that.
When it came to the was it I Am No Man scene,
Yeah,
people lost their minds in the cinema. I'll agree. I was one of those people myself. And when I was watching Twilight, don't mention that ever again. But yeah, there was a scene in that where it ended up being just a vision. Everyone in cinema was like, nah, 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 nah. Someone actually like yelled like, get fucked kind of thing. Like they were so annoyed with that particular one. But yeah, no, it does happen here. But yeah, if you ever in Melbourne, you go to the Astor, best place to go to for something like that. It's actually enjoyable.
Brad. But yeah, so Scream 3.
Okay, this was the
It's
one I was in a bit of a debate about with someone at work because we got to realize that there was things happening in the world that changed the way it ended up being.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, at the time when this was about to go into, I think, principal photography, that's when Columbine happened,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So in the end, instead of having Stu that was going to come back, he was going to be orchestrating all of these from prison and having things happen in the school. That was all scrapped. So that all, instead of going back to Woodsboro, even though we technically kind of did go back to Woodsboro because we had Stab 3 getting done at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything had to change. They even like the producers, they're like, you can't have people actually getting hurt. Like you'll actually find that most of the blood that happens is going to be like the aftermath of everything. They actually don't really show anyone being injured. The only person you really see getting injured is Lance Hendrickson.
Yeah.
No one
Yeah.
else younger than him. You don't really see it.
No, like even when Patrick Warburton buys it, it's like you just see the aftermath of it. Like you see the knife in his back, but like they really toned down the violence on Scream 3. And I find it really interesting that that idea of Stu coming back and orchestrating like a whole cult of ghost faces from prison kind of lived on when Kevin Williamson did The Following. Like I was like, because I remember watching The Following and just going, this seems really familiar. I know this idea from this is what he was going to do for Scream 3. So, of course, I'm watching The Following and I'm just like going, oh man, Scream 3 could have been so good. Like,
it would have been phenomenal to have him back, but because also you watch Scream 6 and they keep on mentioning him.
I am a Stu truther through and through. Stu's not dead. Like, I will die on that hill. Stu's not dead.
But yeah, apart from doing that and having to like tone everything down, so this is why everyone's like, oh, it's really crap and blah blah blah. And you're like, yeah, well, there are reasons, and they kind of did the best of what they can do. And I kind of originally thought that maybe Wes was kind of doing a thing where, as franchises go on, they do get a little campier and a bit sillier. And I thought maybe he's just playing up on that because it did become a little comical and very satirical. Like, I will say this, I hated Parker Posey in this film because she's so because she overacts so much. And when I was younger watching it, I was like, you got a job? What kind of thing? Like, I didn't understand what she was doing when I was younger, and I really did not like her performance because of that. But now I'm like, I get what she's doing.
Yeah.
But then again, I thought I was going to be sitting down watching like a gore fest when I was younger. So
well, that's the thing. I kind of had like a really weird sort of like arc with Scream 3 because I liked it when it first came out. I was a bit confused by it because I was like, this is really strange. Like the Jay and Silent Bob cameo for me was just like, whoa, what? What? Scream takes place in the same universe as Clerks? I'm officially confused. That means Dogma takes place in the same universe as Scream. And I'm really losing my mind now. But then I sort of got to the point where I was like, oh, Scream 3 is just like really bad. And it's basically a comedy. And I just, oh my God, like it could have been so good. And now I've come sort of full circle with it. And I'm back to really enjoying Scream 3 again for what it is. Like, I'll always kind of wish it could have been what it could have been. But for what it is, I like it. And I do love, this is something me and B talk about all the time. I love that it's such a great ending to Sydney's story. Like, that last scene where, you know, she decides not to lock the door swings open and she's cool with it, and she just sits down with Dewey and Gail and McDreamy to like watch TV, watch a movie. That's such a great ending for
Yeah.
this. Like, if Scream had ended there, you'd kind of be okay with it. Like, if that was the end of Sid's story, you'd just be like, that is so fitting and perfect. The only thing that I really still have a sticking point with Scream 3 is the whole long lost brother angle as Ghostface. He is my least favorite Ghostface. Maybe not my absolute least. We've still got Scream 4's over in the corner saying, hold my beer. But, I just
waited for me to have a drink.
I'm sorry, I was hoping you to do a
Oh,
spit
good.
But I mean, we're talking about a comedy, so it was only fitting.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, I just, the whole brother angle, just, it's a bit too daytime soap opera. And I get what they were trying to do with it, but and he's such a douchebag, really. It's just like, oh, you got to live in a small town with your mum, and I got to like become a big shot Hollywood director making horror movies. My life is so tough. You're just like, dude, what? What is your motivation? You wanted to grow up in like the left armpit of nowhere in Woodsboro and just like go to Woodsboro High? Like, that's what you're jealous of? Like, are you an idiot? Like, you're in Hollywood making like a high what in the Scream universe is like the most lucrative franchise into horror at that point. Like,
Yeah.
you're really making a lot of money working as a director, and your big problem in life is that you got adopted. Yeah, okay. You suck, dude. You suck officially. But the other thing I find really, really weird about Scream 3 is that it's a Weinstein film, and the whole backstory of Lance Henriksen's character with those parties and the assault on Sydney's mum is just like, oh wow.
It's like hiding in plain sight.
I know, watching it now, it's just like, and knowing how much interference the Weinsteins had in that movie, like basically shaking the finger and going, no, Columbine, no killing people, do this instead. You're just sort of going like, what? Like, Harv, dude, what are you trying to tell us here? You know, it's a bit on the nose.
Because even Angeline was someone who, to get that role, like slept with the director to get there. And also to think she was actually going to be a ghost face as well. She was supposed to be originally, I think, one of Sydney's classmates or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think they actually said in the end, because she was supposed to be partners with Roman, they couldn't do it because it seemed a little too incestuous because he was too obsessed with Sydney, which
Yeah.
I can understand. But then it does seem really weird to have that scene where, you know, the house is blown up and like, Angelina, what are you doing over there? Like, it just seems just like they could have just deleted that. They didn't really need that
Yeah.
particular part. Yeah, it's a red herring, but it just seemed way too out of place.
Yeah. I do feel like the whole red herring thing in Scream 3 did feel a bit forced at times,
Yeah.
compared to the first two. Like, with the first two, everything felt a lot more organic, whereas with number 3, it was just sort of like, I don't know. I guess it's because like the dynamic for the characters is very different in number 3. Like, they're not a group of friends as such. Like, you've literally got like Dewey, Gale, and Sid.
Yeah.
Everyone else is just like sort of just people that are thrown into this situation through their work circumstances. So I feel like it is kind of missing that closeness that the first two had between the group of friends. But I mean, and I do kind of feel like Killing Cotton at the start was again a great opening. But I do feel like it was a mistake because he had grown into such a likable, enjoyable character.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love the idea of him moving to LA and essentially becoming Jerry Springer.
Mhm.
That was just so cool. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a flawed film, but it's still really enjoyable. I mean, I remember hearing someone say once that like the worst Scream sequel is still more enjoyable than the best Halloween sequel.
Yeah.
um, which I'm like, oh, look, Page 20 is pretty good, and I'm probably the only person in the world that likes Resurrection.
I love
Um,
Resurrection.
right, we've talk about Resurrection at some point. It's so great,
Definitely.
underrated. I love Halloween Resurrection, but yeah, I mean, look, all of the Scream sequels are in their own way a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean, I feel three is just. I feel like it's gotten a bit of a bad rap over the years.
There could be that disconnect simply because in the film they even poked the fun of this fact that they had to constantly rewrite because it constantly was getting leaked online. So
Yeah,
they're even
yeah,
there like, oh, there's another rewrite. Oh, there's three scripts out there and we don't know which one the killer read. So I
yeah,
think that disconnect came from that because they're like, oh god, we got to type stuff, do a Kubrick and freaking do it on the set while while freaking the actor
yeah,
sitting next to you kind of thing.
yeah, totally, totally. And I mean, I feel like Scream 3 is a movie you've got to watch in a certain way. Like you can't watch it expecting it to be like a horror thriller. Like you kind of if you watch it as like a horror comedy, like it's sort of like it's almost like a Scooby Doo episode.
Absolutely.
Um, like it really is because it's like everyone's running around trying to solve the mystery, and there's wacky hijinks, and Gail and Parker Posey are going to interview Princess Leia to try and like find stuff, and it's kind of just a fun sort of mystery whodunit. Like it really is a movie that I've sort of just like completely turned around on over the years.
I feel like that is kind of like watching like Halloween season of the witch. Like everyone's like, oh, it's so weird. It's so this. I don't like it. Be like, if you actually just watch it for what it is, you will freaking love it. Don't just, yeah.
Absolutely,
I love
absolutely,
it. Love it so much.
absolutely. And I was the same. I was like the pretentious asshole Halloween fan that was like, "Oh, season of the witch, boo!" But I rewatched it and I was just like, why am I hating on this so much? I love Tom Atkins. Like, I'm basically instead of watching this going like this is meant to be a sequel to Halloween, where's Michael? Just watch it as what it is, and I had a really good time with it. So yeah, it's again, I'm a season of the witch convert now, like have been for a couple of years now. So
Yeah, if you just understand what they were doing, where they were like, well, let's just release a film under the Halloween title every year. Yeah, it didn't work, but at least with horror, like that's what I like about it. They gave it a try. It was something different. It's a
exactly,
bit silly, but who cares? Silly goes with the territory, seriously.
totally. I mean, God, Nightmare on Elm Street 6. I mean, come on.
Houseboat horror. Oh my god, I
Yeah.
gotta do an episode on that series. Have you watched it?
I haven't for years, but I did rewatch Cheerleader Camp not that long ago,
Oh yes.
which I remember seeing as bloody pom poms on VHS, and it took
Yep.
me forever to track it down. And I'm just like, I had these fond rose colored memories of that movie being so amazing, and I rewatched it, and it's kind of terrible, but it's still amazing. I just sort of went, I remember this movie being so much cooler, and watching it now, I'm just like, man, this is really kind of bad. And all the actors in there are like 90% of them were from adult films, so
Yeah.
it's kind of really bad acting, but it's still great. It's amazing. I love it to death.
It's a guilty pleasure. It's like watching Slaughter High. That's my ultimate one. Love
Absolutely.
that movie to bits. So speaking of which, let's go back to Scream because we go on tangents. It's what I knew was going to happen, but we got time. So
Anyone who's ever heard me on my other podcast is just like, they're probably sitting here going, is this guy going to be done in under 3 hours? Like, yes, we will. We won't be 3 hours, I promise.
Scream 4. This is
Yeah.
one where I feel like we just got caught up in the whole idea of the legacy film that we really probably didn't need it. I still enjoy it because it was Wes's last one, but
Scream 4 is a movie that I watched.
it's a film. It's
It's not
definitely
made, and I watched it. Yeah. So Scream 5, hey? No, look, four is such a weird movie because I think my biggest issue with 4 is that, like, and I know it was trying to do the whole influencer thing, like many, many years before influencing became a thing. I mean, that's a great thing about Wes. He was always ahead of the curve.
Mhm.
Like, he was always sort of, going, yeah, I can see this being a thing in the future. And I feel like people sort of weren't really on board with that when Scream 4 came out. My biggest kind of gripe with Scream 4 is that, and this is going to sound really weird because we're talking about a horror movie, but it doesn't have a happy ending. And all of the other Screams kind of have a happy ending. Like, they all have a very upbeat ending. Like, despite the multiple stabbings and murders in a variety of horrible ways that happen throughout the course of the Scream trilogy so far, they always end on a fairly upbeat, kind of happy note.
Yeah.
And you leave the cinema sort of going like, oh, that was really fun. And, that was cool. And hey, what about this bit? What about this bit? Scream 4 has a very dour ending. And I kind of attribute that to Kevin Williamson's lack of involvement. And because, I mean, I think it was Erin Kruger was writing on Scream 4, I
I think
believe,
so. Yeah.
who, has written some great stuff and has written some not so great stuff. But yeah, I sort of like the whole really downbeat ending of it with, like, oh, Jill's a hero and blah 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 blah, and the hospital ending felt very tacked on, which I know it was. Like,
Yeah.
it felt like a last minute addition. And I know it was a last minute addition, but it really feels like it.
Yeah.
And I think my other gripe, aside from the ending just being kind of like, oh, bummer. Okay. Now I feel vaguely depressed. Thanks, Scream. Um, I feel like the kind of other gripe I have with it is that the group of teens that, like, we were following around weren't really that likable, with the exception of Kirby. Like,
Yeah, I'd agree.
yeah, I just feel like there wasn't anything there to really connect with. They weren't very engaging. They were all kind of douchey, except for Kirby.
Yeah.
Like, Kirby was the only one where you kind of like, oh, I like you. I could hang out with you.
Mm.
Whereas, like, with all of the other Scream movies, like, for the most part, even 3, with, like, what we were just talking about, with, like, the disconnect between the characters where they aren't really friends, there were still characters there that you enjoyed. You enjoyed spending time with them. You enjoyed hanging out with them.
Yeah.
Whereas with 4, it's kind of like, it's like, oh, can we get back to Dewey and Gale, please? Can we get back to Dewey and Gale? I don't like this kid. So yeah, I mean, even the kids in the film class, you're kind of like going, oh, these guys could be like the new Randys of this generation, but they're just kind of jerks. So
Yeah. Like a film class like that would be something that I would like, but something about that particular class, yeah, I'd prefer not to, or club, prefer not to be in it.
yeah,
Yeah. No.
yeah, they just weren't very and I mean, it's weird because 4, I feel like 4 has some really good ideas. Like, I love the Stabathon, that whole
Yeah.
sequence of, like, oh, we're in Woodsboro, we've embraced this, like, grisly heritage of our small town and what it's become famous for, and every year we have a big party and watch all the stab movies in a barn. That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So cool, such a great idea. But I just feel like it's a movie that, and again, I know it had massive production problems. I know Wes didn't have a very good time on it with, the Weinsteins interfering, which is, find me a Miramax movie where there isn't like the Weinsteins interfered and screwed this for everyone's story involved. And yeah, we'll be doing well. But yeah, I know Wes didn't have a particularly good time with it, but I feel like it's a movie that had so much potential but didn't live up to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it has the weakest opening of any Scream film. Like, the constant, like, double bluff
Yeah.
throughout the opening. It just got like, once would have been like, oh, that's kind of cool, but then they kept doing it, and you're sort of like going, has the movie started yet?
It's also a
Or
case of how many cameos can we fit into this film as well, which really
yeah,
bogged it down as well, which I felt.
yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, it just felt a bit weak, I guess. which is sad. And I don't like saying anything bad about Wes Craven ever.
Yeah.
Let alone his final film. I feel dirty doing it. Like it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, Wes. But and I know it's really not his fault as such, because I know there was like so much studio interference and like script issues and all that sort of stuff, and test screenings and just there. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's just kind of it's the weakest entry in the entire series and the worst ghost faces. Like,
I
yeah,
don't like the ghost faces, but then I've got my reasons. I'm not a big fan of Emma Roberts. I feel like she just plays the same character all the time.
mm,
And there was just she wasn't as like everyone will put her in like their top 5 ghost faces, and I was like,
no,
I honestly put Roman ahead of them, and that's saying a lot.
I am the same, and I hate Roman. I think Roman's a dick. But like Jill, and here's the thing with Scream 4. I can barely remember any of the other characters' names. Like I remember I know Deputy, the deputy, I remember her. I know Anthony Anderson popped up in it because I
Yeah,
enjoyed his cameo.
who's Perkins?
Uh,
Yeah, so
yeah. Um, I remember Jill. I remember Kirby. And obviously Sydney, Gale, and Dewey, and the rest of them. I can't even remember the characters' names. Like
yeah,
I just can't. And I've watched Scream for like probably at least a half dozen times, and it just doesn't stick. Like 5 and 6, I'm just like, yep, that, rattle off the facts. 4, it's just like they're just so unmemorable and unlikable that I just like just out of my head. Because I can't even remember the guy that was like Ghostface with Jill, the guy that
Charlie.
she Charlie. Thank you,
Yeah.
the film club nerd with his webcam thing.
Macaulay
He's just,
Culkin's brother.
oh my god, it was too.
Yeah, it's Rory. Yeah.
But he was such an unlikable character that like, yeah, you got to the end of it, and Jill's motivation was just like she's just kind of going like, how fucked in the head are you?
Yeah.
I know that was kind of the point. Like, Wes was like poking fun at like fame culture and like, being Insta famous or TikTok famous as the kids are nowadays. But yeah, she just, I don't know, like she just wasn't a likable character as a ghost face.
Yeah.
You didn't like her before she was the killer. And then when she was revealed to be the killer, you were just like, mm, okay. I'm still
Yeah.
not a fan. Like,
No. But when it comes to Scream 5, I don't know if it's because this is the one I've got the least amount of experience with. It it doesn't leave an impression on me as much as I would have hoped it did.
mm,
And
what's that?
I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. Like, I still enjoy having, like, everyone come back for this, but I don't know. There's just, I didn't really like the idea of like hallucination of Billy popping up with Sam. Like,
Yeah.
I love Sam, love Jenna in this. I love that they brought back a proper opening scene with Jenna because she was amazing in it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, something about this just seemed a little too cop outy because they were trying to like, well, here's our legacy characters. Oh, let's connect her to Billy. Even though when it comes to Randy's niece and nephew, I believe that a bit more than I did with Billy having this illegitimate daughter. Because
Yeah.
like Randy's niche, because I'm watching Yellow Jackets at the moment. She's an amazing actress. I can't remember her name, unfortunately. I'm terrible with names, but I quite like them. And her being the new Randy was so good.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just everyone else just a bit lackluster. Like you got Kyle. What's his name? Kyle.
Carl Gallagher, I look, that was one of
Why
my
was he in it?
he was so wasted because I love him. Like,
He's good.
have you seen the Cleansing Hour on
Yes.
Shudder?
Yeah.
I love that movie. That movie is so amazing and so criminally underrated, and he is so great in it. So I was very disappointed that he had such a tiny role in Scream 5. I Scream 5 is a weird one for me because I currently love it. I love it and Six. Like I think it was such a great, but I didn't always love it. When I first saw it, I was really bummed out because I walked into that movie. B and I went and saw it, and we were both just like, Stu's coming back. And we're watching the movie, and there's so many things in there, like the way Ghostface killed some people, and we're like, it's got to be Stu. Only Stu would be so stupid to do that in broad daylight. And he's coming back to get revenge on his boyfriend's illegitimate daughter. Like, which totally tracks. Like, I mean, yeah, there was something going on, Billy and Stu.
It ended in his house.
Right? That's the thing. And then to the end, and it's Stu's freaking house, and you're just going like, it's got to be Stu. It's got to be Stu. So when we got to the Ghostface reveal, I was really bummed out, and I walked out of that movie so confused. And I mean, the Billy thing did take a little bit of getting used to for me because it was just, it wasn't an element like, because the Scream movies have been so grounded through up to this point. Like, there hasn't been any supernatural stuff or anything like that. So it did take a little bit of getting used to because I was just like, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not sure. I don't know. Like, I get why they're doing it. It's well done. I like the idea of, connecting the characters and having the legacy there. I think that was kind of a smart way to do it. And it would have been really cool. Like, it's a smart way to pass the torch. But the problem with passing the torch is that now we're bringing Sydney back for number 7.
Yeah.
Like, why did we do 5 and 6, guys? I'm confused. Why? Like, so I was a bit, we were both a bit like, we're not sure about this when we walked out of Scream 5. And it's a movie that I've really grown to like and start loving a lot more the more I've watched it, and the more I've kind of watched it without having expectations there. Because there's a lot of shit in Scream 5 that just kind of like, as a fan, just kicks you in the nuts. Like, Dewey dying, for starters, was just like, okay, I need a minute here. Stop the movie. I just need to mourn for a little bit. And then I'll be back. So that was like a lot. And then we didn't get Stu at the end of it. So that was a lot again. So yeah, it's a weird it was a weird entry at the time, but it is one that I've really grown to appreciate as its own thing. And there was a lot of stuff in there, like the Wes at the party thing was just kind of like, oh my
Wes, yeah.
Jesus. So yeah, it's a movie that I feel like it's one of those ones where if you sort of give it a bit more of a chance and watch it a few more times, it can start to grow on you. Because I love Samantha. I love Jenna Ortega. The core 4, just great. Love them to death. It's such a great way to keep the franchise going because you do fall in love with those characters. So I feel like the gripes I've got with it, like my love for those characters and wanting to hang with them going forward, in number 6 and I was hoping for number 7, that kind of outweighed any gripes I had with it. Like, I was really bummed that Kyle Gallner just like was in there for 2 seconds and
like, I know you're setting him up for a red. Sorry, I just cut you off. But I know that you're setting him up to be a red herring, but I was like, you completely wasted such a good actor. Like, yeah, you got to have him in it, but you literally wasted a good talent.
It was like he was a red herring for about 4 minutes. Like, because it's like he shows up and he's like, oh, creepy older McConaughey from Dazed and Confused dude at the high school. And then it's like creepy dude at the bar, and then it's like he's taking a whiz and he gets shanked,
Yeah.
outside the bar. And it's just like, oh, I guess he wasn't the red herring after all. Like,
Do you ever watch A Pup Named Scooby Doo? For some reason, it reminds me how that there's actually a guy called Red Herring. That Fred's always like, "Oh, it's Red Herring. It's not
yeah,
me, Fred," kind of thing. Like just having him just pop up like Red Herring kind of thing. You're like,
yeah,
oh my god.
yeah,
But yeah, I honestly like the times I watched it twice,
yeah.
and when I watched it, I was like, "Well, why was he there? Like, why did you waste having him? Like, was he contracted to have to be in another like New Line Cinema movie that you kind of like, well, come do this kind of thing?"
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It was a really weird choice. I mean, look, I do feel like they had. I feel like the Radio Silence guys had a lot to juggle with Scream Five. Because it was kind of like it was make or break for the franchise. Because four was just not well received,
Yeah.
and I feel like there was just so much sort of riding on Scream Five. Like for them, obviously they were probably feeling the pressure, and it was like, oh, first Scream movie without Wes Craven. How much is this gonna suck? So I feel like they were juggling a lot with that movie, and I feel like for any faults it does have, they did by and large manage to pull it off. Wasn't a big fan of the ghost faces. And I get what they were doing with the the whole, like slam on toxic fandom.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty clever. It was a little bit too. I remember watching it in the cinema and going, "This is a bit too on the nose." Like you're kind of really hammering home that point, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to this day, I know B is really disappointed that we didn't get Ghostface in a crow mask with a flamethrower because that scene was fucking cool. That was so cool. Like, I'm just like, oh man, I want to see that movie. Can we just like, instead of like bringing Sydney back, can we just start making the Stab series as like proper movies now? Because I really want to see that.
Yeah, just I know they would have had a hard time because obviously apart from trying to make something fresh, but you're gonna try and pay, fan service at the same time with everyone else who's already been with it. But these weren't memorable ghost faces. Like if anything, these are really low ranked for me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm gonna say it now. I don't believe Amber took out Dewey.
No, right.
Now I know at the start he's like, oh, I've got 9 stab wounds, I've got a limp, and I've got nerve damage. And I'm like, okay, you're pointing out you're weak. But maybe because I know that David Arquette, he's ripped because he's been doing wrestling.
Yeah.
She didn't take him out. Don't even pretend that she did.
The thing is, it's like, how many times did Dewey shoot her? And Amber's like this. She's a twig, right? And it's like, even wearing a bulletproof vest, like even wearing Kevlar, like those slugs are going to knock her on her ass and break every rib in her tiny little body. She is not getting up and bisecting Dewey after that. Like, I don't buy that for a second.
No.
Like, it was just, come on, guys. Like, yeah.
No, just when she's like, but I got Dewey, and I was like, no, you fucking didn't. Don't you lie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't you
yeah.
lie.
Like, this is why your head gets set on fire at the end. Like, which was very satisfying, I gotta say. I was just like, yeah, barbecue Amber, I'm cool with that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm really cool with that.
She really did not leave an impression on me.
No, no. But neither
Talking,
did Jack Quaid, really. Like, I just wasn't really
I feel like he's someone else who got wasted because Jack Quaid is so
he's
good.
great. Yeah, he's great. Like, I mean, I love him in The Boys. Like, he's fantastic. He's a great actor, but yeah, I don't know. Just his character just did not. I would have preferred to see him not be Ghostface. Like, I would have enjoyed his character a lot more because I was kind of enjoying him up until the reveal. And then I was just like, this just doesn't really work for me, him being Ghostface. Like, because yeah, like up until that, I was like, yeah, I kind of like this guy. He's cool. Like, I get him. He's like, yes, let's get out of town. I'm like, finally, someone smart. Um, but yeah, it just didn't work for me as Ghostface. Like,
No.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, very, very kind of like, yeah. And again, I'm like, I've sort of struggled a bit with that in the sense that, like, okay, Jake, were they kind of crap ghost faces, or are you just still hurting because it wasn't Stu? Like, are you still feeling betrayed because Stu didn't come back? Because it's hard, it's hard to work out. It really is.
Well, going into number 6, the amount of times they mention Stu, and
Oh
it's like, the more you mention him, the more we know we're not getting him. You need to stop that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, stop playing with my feelings, Radio Silence, please. I can
I
only
just,
take so much.
it's just like when they're at like that shrine, and like, oh, that's the TV. They got Stu. Oh yeah, Stu. Do you think he's alive? And you're like, don't tease me.
You're just like, don't do it, ho, don't do it.
But it was actually with that shrine that actually made the whole idea of Samantha hallucinating and seeing Billy. I bought it there when
Yeah,
she's looking at his clothes and he's like, "Oh, it's quite fitting. You should wear it." And that's the knife that she uses to protect herself. But I really did enjoy Scream 6 more than 5, and I don't know it's because, granted, when it comes to the first ones, they've all been in California. It wasn't
yeah,
always in Woodsboro, always California. They went to the East Coast, and I'm like, hey, you took it somewhere different, and you have the core four, you have a likable group of people.
yeah,
I enjoyed it so much with all them.
yeah, yeah. I really, really, I went into 6 with like zero expectations, like zero. I was just like, I'm just going to go in. I'm not going to expect Stu to come back. Even though they kept teasing me with it through the whole freaking movie, uh, which was just rude.
Mm-hmm.
Ghostface in the city, like Ghostface in Manhattan, was so boss. Like that scene in the bodega, the convenience store, that was awesome. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so cool. Like,
Well,
and just the gore factor that, like, just they upped the gore factor. Like the kills were like really brutal. Like it wasn't gory in like first 5 minutes of Hellraiser sense, but like the kills were so brutal. Like just the savagery of Ghostface was like, whoa, dude, like you need a anger management course or something? Like,
it's
yeah.
it's. I think it was more to kind of prove that in New York, no one sees anything, so you can do
Mm,
whatever you freaking want. No one's gonna know. But also, the first time you see Ghostface pick up a gun instead of having the knife, where
yeah,
for that moment you're like, he could end this right now if he had the right shot because he had a shot him.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It was great. And I know I remember seeing like some sort of Scream purists kind of just being like, Ghostface would never use a gun. I'm like, dude, Billy
he's
had
not
a
a person.
gun. Billy had a gun. Uh, Mickey had a gun. Like, there's a long history of firearms in Ghostface. Like, not while he was wearing the mask, fair
Yeah,
enough. I mean, yeah, that scene was great, and the scene on the train was so cool. Like, that was just so great. Like, yeah, and I mean, I loved like just the character development. I loved seeing Sam struggling with like what she's done, and just her history and stuff like that. Like the core four, again, great characters. Sam's new boyfriend, like, hunky dude from across the way. He was cool. Nice seeing Kirby make a comeback.
mm-hmm.
First survivor to go into law enforcement. I don't know why that hasn't happened before, but that was cool. Yeah, like 6 is just such a fun movie. Like, and as much as I want to see the core four come back, it's sort of like Scream 3, whereas like if the sister story ends there, like cool place to end it. Like Sam just throwing the mask away, walking off to the sunset, like
Yeah.
yeah, just such a fun movie. Again, I wasn't huge on the ghost faces, but one of the things that 6 really did cement for me is how cool it is that the Radio Silence guys are echoing the first three movies in a sense, because it's like, okay, original Scream, you've got two crazy horror movie fans.
Yeah.
Scream 5, you've got two really toxic horror movie fans. And then, you know, Scream 2, you've got grieving mum from the killer of the first one. Scream 6, grieving father from the killer of Scream 5. It's like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And three faces for the first time. Like, you know, well, I wasn't.
Was he really a ghost face, though? Was he just like a ghost face without a mask, would you say?
Yeah, well, it's another one of those movies where I kind of feel like I need to watch it a few more times, because I think I've only seen it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And I'm still working out, like, who killed who where. Like, was the dad in the mask at some point? Like, or was it always the brother and the sister?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's and it's cool because it's hard to pick as well, which I kind of like.
It's hard to pick because I'm thinking, why didn't I notice this earlier? But pretty much everyone's the same height, so you can't really go off and go, well, that ghost face is reasonably short compared to like Gale or whatnot.
Yeah.
But you think that Quinn, well, she tried taking out Gale, because we know Gale's, she survived it.
Gale's like Rambo at this point.
She is.
But and it was also like, you know, first Scream movie without Sid. Which I was kind of wondering how it would work, but I think the core 4 are such great characters that you can keep the franchise going with just them.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was cool seeing Gale in there, but it was also one of those things where it's like, do we really need Gale? You know, does Gale really need to make a comeback, or, you know, does Gale deserve her happy ending as well? So, well, it was cool seeing her. Like, I do really feel like the core 4 are such strong, great characters that you can keep the franchise going with just them for a few more years.
Yeah.
So I'm, you know, with the news with number 7, I'm a bit kind of bummed out, because it's like, I just fell in love with these characters and you're kind of taking them away from me. Like,
Yeah.
come on, guys. Like, and you're bringing Sid back. And I feel like the problem with number 7 is that, like, it's painted itself into a corner, because you've kind of got two options. You either kill Sid off. No one wants to see that. No one wants to see Sydney die. That's like killing off Laurie Strode, man. Like, no one wants to watch that movie. You know, and every time they did make that movie, everyone chucked a shit fit and they retconned it.
Yeah.
Or, you know, Sid survives and, you know, rides off into the sunset, which we've already seen like 4 or 5 times. So yes. It takes the element of surprise out of it. And I think that was the cool thing for me about 5 and 6, was that element of surprise that was in the first Scream was kind of back.
Yeah.
And I didn't know these characters. I didn't know who they were. Like, Sid wasn't the main character. Like, you know, Sid, Gale, and Dewey were kind of like, they were side characters. So with the core 4 being the main characters, like, you didn't know who was going to survive. Like, it was kind of like, who's the killer? Who's going to get shanked? Like, so that kind of fun element from the first one was really back for me, which I thought was great.
Yeah, like, if you didn't have Gale, it would still connect with the other movies well, just with Sam being Billy's daughter. So that connection was always going to be there. So I agree that we didn't really need to have Gale back, but of course, great to have her there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and great scene. I mean, her fight with Ghostface in the apartment's rad. Like, it's so cool.
Well, she hadn't had a real confrontation. Like, that was her first phone call, remember?
Yeah.
She's like, this is the first time you're speaking to me on the phone. Like, yeah.
So it was really cool. Like, I mean, it was great. Like, if Gale doesn't, and that was the thing. It felt like, if Gale doesn't come back for 7 or any other movies, this is such a cool send off for her. Like, you know, it's like, okay, she you know, she gets a bit jammed up, but she kicks a bit of ass as well. Like, So
And
it
she
was
does end with the whole, don't tell Sydney that he didn't take me out.
yeah,
Yeah.
which was so cool. Like that was so cool. Like such a great moment for her.
Have you heard if Patrick Dempsey is actually coming back for the next one?
I don't know. I've heard maybe he is like I keep seeing Matthew Lillard is like haunting me from the ether. Like because every time I'm like online, it's like Matthew Lillard says he's ready to come back for Scream, but it's not up to him. And I'm like, Matt, dude, we know, okay, and we want you back. We want you back, dude. Like, we get it. Like, everyone knows. Like, stop saying it to the internet and start saying it to friggin' Spyglass or Lionsgate or whoever. Like, oh man. I heard that Patrick Dempsey got an offer or has been asked, but he hasn't said yes yet. I mean, yeah, they must have driven a dump truck of money up to Neve's doorstep for it.
He deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to think now, if they do that and they have Patrick, then now this is putting Sydney's children in the line of fire as well now.
See, I sort of thought about it and I was like, as much as I'm like, I don't know how this could work, I'm like, the one way it could work really well is if, Sydney's kids were in high school, like, and you brought Stu back and you just went, hey, that whole like Stu orchestrating ghost faces thing that we were gonna do in number 3, let's do it in this one, but with Sydney's kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could be like a Stu getting revenge kind of thing. That could maybe work. Or the other option is you have one of Sydney's kids be a ghost face and like, have the whole bad seed thing going on. I don't know if that'd really work, but
Well, I'm thinking, how many kids does she have? Because she had a stroller with one in number 5, and then she said that she had taken the girls to school. So there'd be at least 3, but they'd be probably like
I'm thinking
under
like
10 now.
yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah, I'm guessing. I mean, you'd probably have to like skip ahead a few years and age them.
Be like little Michael Myers, like little Jamies
Yeah,
in little clown pajamas.
tiny baby ghost face masks, like
That'd be adorable, actually.
like little ghost face Chuckies. They'd be like living dead dolls.
So,
But
what's your ranking?
oh look, Billy and Stu are my number ones, hands
Definitely.
down. Billy and Stu are number ones. Always have been, always will be. Like you can't top those guys. I think my number 2 would be Mickey
Same.
and Mrs. Loomis. Number 3, probably the dad from Scream 6 and his 2 kids. I think they were pretty strong. And then 4, it's just pretty much descending order. 4, I'm going to give it to the guys from 5, Jack Quaid and Amber. 4, 5 would be Roman, and the Roman's only getting the number 5 spot because Jill from Scream 4 is last. A very faint last, dead last, where she belongs. How about you? What's yours?
Well, I'm going to give like a honorable mention to David from the start of Scream 6 who killed Samara Weaving, because that was like a false kind of like, wait, we're revealing a ghost face now? What the hell is that?
Yes.
I quite enjoyed that.
Let's talk about that. That was so cool and such a great opening too. Like that whole alleyway scene, so good.
Oh no, as soon as I saw it was Samara Weaving, but also she had her accent as well. It's like, yes. Yeah. But yeah,
plus
just
one opening because Ice Nine Kills poster on the fridge. I was so down for that. I was like, that's the boys. Like,
no, it's just like admiring his work, taking the mask off. I'm like, what do you mean? What, the mask? What's going on?
yeah,
I remember like knowing who Ghostface was from the start. What the hell is this? But it was it them finishing Richie's film, Ricky.
Yeah.
Richie's film, yeah. So yeah, him and his mate in the fridge. Honorable mention.
Yes, honorable. They do deserve an honorable mention.
Now I was kind of breaking these down as individuals. So
Ah,
I am gonna do Billy number one, but Stu is like scraping right behind at number two.
yeah. To be fair, I think Billy's a solid number one in anyone's book.
Well, he was the master of it, and Stu was full on, just like he was peer pressured.
Yeah,
He was peer
yeah.
pressured into doing it.
Stu did it all for love. I'm convinced of it. Like,
Oh yeah, well, because there was all these videos I had on TikTok where they'd have this song saying like, "I did it for love, I did it for fun, I couldn't get enough, and did it for fame." And when it comes to like, I did it for love, it would be Billy, or sometimes it'd be Nancy. And I did it for fun would be showing like Stu, and couldn't get enough would be Billy as well. And then for fame, of course, it was going to be Jill.
yeah,
But Mickey, just because he was batshit crazy, just because he just liked the idea of the media circus and just going, "Oh, just plead insanity, see how well that works for me."
and I mean Timothy Oliphant as well. Like,
So
he's
good.
great in everything.
Yeah. I'd go Debbie next, simply because that was just like sharp right turn. Had no idea that we'd be seeing her come as Nancy. Now I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna put Roman next, and I know that he has a bit of a crap reason, but you wouldn't have the events of Scream without him, because
Bold
he's the one
choice.
who told Billy
Mm.
about what Maureen was doing. So I think people seem to overlook that, just because it's kind of like, oh, it's a brother. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't have Scream without him. This was something I was saying to someone at work, and he was like, "No, he's crap," and I was just like, "Shut your face! He's not that bad." But
I think my kind of gripe with that is like I didn't like the retconning with three. I didn't like the retcon of like Roman was really the mastermind behind it. That was kind of like that was a bit of a gripe for me. But I mean, in continuity, that totally makes sense.
yeah, and also just the fact he was just the only one who was by himself, the only single ghost face that we had.
Was the only solo ghost face, which was, a
But
bit.
then I'm also thinking, if we did have Angelina as well, like, where would she, who would she have been? Was she the one chasing Sydney in the set because she had gone onto the set that particular day? I'm not too sure. I'm going to put Jill a little higher than you have, simply because she had a bit more of a modern motivation, which is pretty much like, I want fame for being a victim instead of being a hero.
Yeah.
Which is, I find a lot of people kind of like, oh, I don't like people playing victims and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
we don't need it. Richie is my next one.
Yeah.
I did like him a little bit better than Charlie. Charlie, couldn't really care much about Charlie, but Richie and the toxic fandom, yeah, I could totally get behind, because I've seen
Yeah.
some people get really obsessed with random stuff.
We're both on the internet, dude. We're both horror fans. We've seen that before. We know these people.
I'd probably go Quinn next. I actually quite enjoyed her. I thought she was pretty good. Then I
Yeah,
would go Ethan, and then I'd go the dad. And I'm more because we don't officially know if their dad, Detective Bailey, was actually
yeah.
Ghostface.
Yeah, yeah. Which is yeah. Now, see, now I'm just gonna have to watch 6 again and just dissect it
You're like,
again.
well, yeah, he got to the crime scene and he changed out, the body for Quinn and whatnot. But I'm like, apart from doing that, like, did he actually kill anyone? Because it would have been Quinn on the train, because Ethan wouldn't have enough time to change out of his outfit, and while he's being watched at the same time. She also, she attempted to take out Gail, which, good luck with you, because it wasn't going to happen. But then I'm like, so Ethan would have been the person to pretend to take out Quinn. But yeah, I don't see the dad actually being a ghost face.
Yeah,
Even though it is interesting to be like, here's a family of 3 finally doing it. But no, I think he was just, because he was a cop, he could make things happen for them.
yeah.
And then I'm going to put Amber dead last, because she didn't take out Dewey. And I refuse to believe that she took out Dewey.
I'm completely 100% with you there.
Yeah. So that's my ranking.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of like, was the dad the ghost face at the start? Like that's my sticking point with number 6. Like, was he the ghost face that took out the other two guys at the start, the two fake ghost faces?
Don't
That's
know, because
my
I'm like,
question.
he's definitely not the one in the bodega, because if he's a cop, he would have been able to shoot better.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just like, because there's a bit of I feel like the thing that makes me think it's the dad at the start of Scream 6 is that there's a lot of rage in that ghost face. Like, there's a lot of like anger and pissed off, and like, your little movie motivation is bullshit. Like, I'm gonna fuck your shit up kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one that makes me sort of stop and wonder. Like, because I don't think it was definitely wasn't Quinn. I don't think it was Quinn at the start. Like, Ethan's a maybe, but yeah.
Now you got me questioning, was it?
I know, right? That's the joy of these movies, is that you can go back and rewatch them so often and just like, yeah, you don't get any definitive answers, and it's so fun to speculate on.
Because it's taking me like years after watching, like, say, Scream 2, for instance, to realize, wait, that was Nancy that took out Randy. And I was just like, really? She did that kind of thing? And because I don't know, just because obviously you see them just always looking the same, sometimes you don't think about who the person was in the mask when they took certain people out.
Yeah.
And then you go back and think, you go, wait, did they really do that? You think,
yeah, well, I think that the fun thing for me, especially with the first one, is sort of dissecting, like doing that jerk off writer thing and dissecting the character motivations and how, like, okay, this is the way Stu acts, this is the way Billy acts, like, this is Billy's motivations. Billy's really angry and sort of, just full of rage at what's happened, and that's why he's doing it, whereas Stu is just batshit crazy and a lot more playful. So, looking at the way each ghost face sort of like dispatches their victims and stuff like that, you kind of like sit there and go, oh, well, I think that was Billy because of this, and I think that was Stu because of this. So yeah, that's kind of what I tend to do when watching these. And I mean, it's so much easier with the first one because like those characters are so well drawn that like kind of really easy to go like, okay, well, the ghost face that you see running around outside Tatum's house when her and Sydney are sitting there talking in broad daylight, that's Stu. Because he's a boss. He would be wearing the suit in daylight, running around being a dickhead, because that's what he does. Like, so yeah, I think that's the really fun part of these movies, and I think that's what keeps people going back to them over and over again. Is that like there is that fun and that mystery to it, and those little unanswered questions that you kind of like, as a fan, you keep trying to answer.
Yeah. So this is why I love this franchise so much.
Right?
It's so good. It is so good. It's just that's Wes. That's the power of Wes Craven for you.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
what he does. It's what he did.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. That's why I feel like Scream has just like, there's so much life in the franchise, and it's kind of like you can have the debate that like having a new ghost face every movie, or a couple of new ghost faces every movie, it doesn't give it the consistency of something like Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's like Michael Myers is coming back, Freddy's coming back, Jason's coming back, Chucky, Pinhead, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I think having a new ghost face does really let Scream reinvent itself with each new film, which I think keeps the franchise fresh. And like, sometimes you're going to get Jill. Sometimes you're going to get Billy and Stu. Sometimes you're going to get Mickey. Like, so, sometimes you're going to get a ghost face that's not as cool as the last ones, but sometimes you're going to get one that's just as cool, or cool in another way, or interesting, or something like that. So I feel like that's one of those things that lets this franchise just keep going on, and why there's so much life left in it. Because, like you said earlier, Ghostface is more of an idea and a concept now that anyone can pick up. So, and like as someone that like, as a comic fan and stuff like that, it's like you could go anywhere with this. Like if Ghostface is such a known and sort of renowned killer, like there could be copycats anywhere. You could do like 30 Scream movies and have each one be fresh and interesting. You could do Scream in Australia, for Christ's sake. Like, you could, hey, someone's like, the internet's a thing. It's real. It exists. You're using it to watch this video. Like,
Exactly.
who's to say someone who hasn't gotten on the internet, some crazy kid in like, Sydney or something like that, hasn't gotten on the internet and read up about this Ghostface guy in America and gone, hey, there's an idea that's time has come. I can use this to like get revenge on people in my life or something like that.
I got their
Please
mark.
don't, please don't do that. Anyone that's listening, I don't want to be charged with seeding ideas or anything. Like, don't try this at home, kids.
Definitely don't try this at home, guys.
Like, yeah, there's so many great places you could go with this concept. And I think that's the strength of it.
Yeah. I really hope that we do get a seventh film. I really hope they can just make it as strong as the last. Obviously, you're only as good as your last film. I really hope they can do this with this next one. I hope they just don't seem like we just lose everything that we got with Jenna Ortega and with Sam.
Yeah, I'm the same. I really hope 7 is good. Like, I want it to be bad. I don't, as much as I'm a bit sort of dubious about it, I really want it to be good. Like, I don't want a bad Scream movie. Like,
Yeah.
And we really haven't had a bad one. Like, as much as I kind of, give 4 shit, it's still fun to watch. I still watch it when I'm doing when I'm doing a marathon. I still watch Scream 4. So yeah.
For me, I find that Neve Campbell's going to be someone who, apart from pay her what she deserves, hence the reason why we didn't have her in number 6, but someone who's like, you also have to give Sydney the story she deserves as well. And I don't see her being someone to go, yeah, here's some money, I'll just make a crap movie.
Yeah.
She cares for this character. She cares for the whole franchise. I think because she's attached, I think we're in for something good.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Alrighty, so I'm going to leave you with one last question. What's your favorite scary movie?
Showgirls.
Showgirls.
Terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. Well, Jake.
My absolute favorite scary movie, the one horror movie that freaks me out no matter what, is actually, there's 2. One I watch regularly and one I very rarely rewatch. One is Hellraiser Inferno, because I find that movie terrifying. In such a good way. Like, I love that movie, and it blends like horror and film noir and like this insane detective story. And I love the idea of Pinhead being an urban legend, but the whole idea of like going to hell because you've betrayed your ideals and who you are is just like, man, being an adult is all about compromise. Like, we're all boned. If that's a precedent for going to hell, the entire human race is. The other one's Wolf Creek. And Wolf Creek terrifies me because of like the whole Ivan Milat thing. And also because like I have known guys like Mick Taylor growing up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not that far of a stretch to think like one of these dudes could lose it and, craziness could ensue.
Oh, so, yeah. We've all met a Mick Taylor. I was actually at a train station once waiting for an Uber, and I turned my head and there was a blue ute, and I was like, what? Like, I actually panicked when I saw it.
Oh, God.
But yeah. So, Jake, thank you.
What's yours?
Mine, Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's always going to be, and I've said this before on the podcast, people who've listened to it are getting like, oh, fucking yes, we know. It's because it was the first villain I watched who scared me.
Yeah.
And I've always admired Wes for being able to do that, because it was, even though I was probably about, how old was I? I can never remember what age I was for this, but I could never get scared when I was little. But then Freddy scared me, and I couldn't watch until I was probably about 11 or 12 again to try and like get over that fear. So yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street. But right behind it, Candyman.
Oh,
and
really?
Simply because Candyman and Freddy, they're not that different. They
No,
both need fear to exist. They end up being a legend in the areas that they originate from. And it's Tony Todd. I mean, come on.
yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
Totally.
I'm look Clive Barker fan, so yeah, Candyman. I adore it. But I was actually scared. Funny before we wrap up,
Yeah.
on the Nightmare on Elm Street front, I was the same. It's actually funny that you bring that up. I was scared of Freddy Krueger and A Nightmare on Elm Street before I even saw that movie. Um, I remember seeing a poster for it at a video store when I was a kid. I would have been maybe 7 or so. Seeing the poster and just like being scared shitless of it. And then late at night, there was a show in the 80s called Entertainment Tonight, and it used to be on like really, really late at night on TV. And it was like, it was basically like just, movie previews and interviews and behind the scenes stuff of what was going on in Hollywood. And it was just before Elm Street was hitting video.
Yeah.
And they showed some scenes from Nightmare on Elm Street, like trailers, and they showed the scene of Freddy walking down the alleyway with the arms stretched out. I shit myself. I was terrified of that movie. I had not seen it. All I'd seen was like that scene and a poster, and I was just terrified of Freddy Krueger at that point. Like, for years, I was just like, and I mean, kids on the playground were just like, oh my God, did you see Nightmare on Elm Street? He turned his fingers into needles and stuck them in the chick's arm. And oh my God, it's so cool. And I'm just like going, this sounds really, really cool. And like, I should be like a cool kid and watch it, but I kind of don't want to because I'm like terrified of this dude. So yeah, but you're right. That Wes Craven, like, man, you had to scare people.
He was good. And yeah, R.I.P. Wes Craven. We'll never have anyone again like him. They'll come close, but they will never have him again.
Absolutely. Man was a genius.
So, Jake, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast tonight. I really appreciate it. And finally getting to actually somewhat meet you, if it's
I know,
by video link.
Finally, we've officially internet met.
Yes, we have. What's it been, like 5-6 years or something like that? It's been a while.
4, 5, something
Something
crazy.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, my absolute pleasure. Anytime.
Oh, we got to definitely do this again. Pick something else. Hellraiser, something else that we got to do.
We'll do Hellraiser, werewolf stuff. Like, yeah.
Yes, definitely werewolf stuff.
And we can talk about Wes Craven again with werewolf stuff because Cursed.
Yes, we can. God, I haven't watched that in so long. I'm gonna have to find that now because I'm watching Yellow Jackets and Christina Ricci, and yeah, I'm gonna have to do that.
Do the unrated cut of Cursed. Like, way better than the PG version.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you like and subscribe, share this with your friends, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.